Terry is in the Ukraine helping little orphans over there. And with us is a good friend, Wendy Griffith. Glad to see you. She's left the CBN newsroom for a day and is here with us the next couple of weeks. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you, sir. It is so wonderful to be here.
We're delighted. It's going to be a special piece you're going to show us in a few minutes, too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Well, anyhow, we'll get to know Wendy a little bit better later in the program. But first in the news, people in Colorado are picking up the pieces after the worst wildfire in that state's history. And investigators suspect that someone actually started the fire intentionally.
And while Colorado was dealing with a massive fire, other parts of the country were facing heavy rains and flash floods. Gary Lane has the story on these major disasters.
Firefighters working around the clock to contain Colorado's Black Forest wildfire received some added help Sunday, as heavy rain helped slow the spread of the destructive blaze. Nearly 500 homes have been destroyed by the wildfire. 2 people have been killed. Evacuees attempted to enter the fire zone this weekend to see if their homes had survived the devastating fire. Police prevented many of them from entering.
All of us are getting treated like criminals. We can't come out. If we come out, we can't go back in.
We have a crime scene in there. We have fire in there. We have down power lines in there. We have trees falling each time there's a gust of wind.
Those that managed to get through were shocked at what they saw. This man says his daughter lost her home.
The people that lost their homes, they're going to hit bottom again when they see theirs for the first time, which probably will be this week.
While fire crews continue to dig up hot spots, fire investigators are sifting through the ash, trying to determine if the fire began accidentally or if someone deliberately ignited the blaze. While heavy rains were viewed as a blessing by many in the Colorado Springs wildfire zone, elsewhere in the country they were viewed as a curse. More than 17 inches of rain near San Antonio, where Texas Rangers endured waist-high floodwaters, searching for people in need of rescue. The monsoon-like rains caused the banks of the Rio Grande to overflow. Heavy rains also pushed into America's heartland. 9 to 10 inches of rain fell in the span of a 2-hour period Saturday in Springfield, Missouri. Flash floods washing cars right off the roadway.
Even though your vehicle's heavy, that water is buoyant and can actually lift you up a little bit in your vehicle. And that's how you lose traction and get blown off the side of the road and can get into real trouble that way.
The severe spring weather isn't over yet. Much of the nation is expected to experience extreme weather throughout the week. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Well, our prayers are with those in Colorado. It's hard to understand what it'd be like to just see your life savings, your home you loved, just wiped out, just completely gone. And it's a tragedy, and of course tragedies are taking place, and this weather is unbelievable, unbelievable. Well, I don't know any of the prophetic significance, but it certainly is that Mother Nature has turned up the spigots on us all around. 500-year records being broken in Europe. Well, it turns out that not only is the U.S. government conducting extensive spying operations, so are our allies, the Brits. Lee Webb is going to tell us just who they've spied on. Here's Lee.
Pat, a British electronic surveillance agency reportedly hacked into the phones and emails of foreign politicians and other officials. The London Guardian newspaper reports the agency did the snooping during 2 major international summits in London 4 years ago. And it raises new questions now about the surveillance programs in the UK as well as here in the U.S. The allegations became public only hours before Britain was due to open this year's G8 International Summit. Some visiting delegates may want to know now if the UK spied on them in 2009. Syria expected to be the top issue at the G8 meeting. President Obama has talked about arming the rebels in Syria, but the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee says Congress wants to know just what the administration plans to do before it approves any aid.
We've asked them to come up and say, if we're going to move this direction, you're going to have to come up with a more comprehensive plan. I mean, it seems to me they have a great media strategy. They don't have a great Syrian strategy.
President Obama plans to meet with Russian President Putin about Syria. Putin says other countries should not be arming the Syrian rebels. Many analysts are calling Iran's new president a moderate, but they caution don't expect any real changes in that country. Chris Mitchell has the story from Jerusalem.
Iran's new president Hassan Rouhani won in a landslide. The 64-year-old successor to Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is promising a revolution in Iran's economy, culture, and politics.
Regarding the Iranian elections, we in Israel have no illusions.
But Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stressed Rouhani has limited powers.
While the elections no doubt expressed a dissatisfaction of the Iranian people with their regime, I don't see it producing the genuine change in Iran's nuclear policy.
The ultimate power in Iran, including its nuclear program, rests with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Before the election, Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Yuval Steinitz told foreign journalists Iran's nuclear program is not about producing a nuclear bomb or two, but rather a nuclear arsenal.
We are not speaking about the Iranian bomb. We are not speaking about having few bombs in the shelter like North Korea. Once they will be there, they will produce dozens, and later on it will take them time, maybe even hundreds of nuclear bombs.
He warned if Iran gets a nuclear arsenal, it would be the first time in history a fanatic religious government possessed nuclear weapons.
If the Iranian will gain nuclear weapons, this is going to change the course of global history.
Rouhani once served as Iran's chief nuclear negotiator. He hinted about his approach to Iran's nuclear program when he said in 2004, "While we were talking with the Europeans in Tehran, we were installing equipment in parts of the nuclear conversion facility in Isfahan. By creating a calm environment, we were able to complete the work there." This method of gentle Iranian diplomacy on the surface, while it races toward a nuclear arsenal behind the scenes, is what alarms many Israelis. Clifford May of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies told CBN News, Iran remains the #1 enemy of the U.S. and Israel.
Iran represents the most important strategic threat to the United States. That means Iran seeks to diminish the United States, destroy its influence in the Middle East and as much of its influence everywhere as it can. But it's not a strategic threat, but an existential threat to Israel.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush says he has not decided to run for president just yet. But if he does, he tells CBN News he will run on his record. Bush and other potential contenders spoke at the Faith and Freedom Coalition's Road to Majority meeting this weekend in Washington. He tells CBN's David Brody he saw problems in Florida from a conservative perspective.
It had the look of a presidential campaign rally and provided a conservative audience for some politicians to test the waters and their message.
There's a war on Christianity, not just from the liberal elites here at home, but worldwide. If we are silent about the issues of our time, then who will speak?
But a lot of eyes and ears are waiting for Jeb Bush, a potential frontrunner with a familiar last name and a pragmatic reputation who wants to focus on solutions, not party squabbles.
We could focus on all of our disparate parts, all the points of disagreement that conservatives have, and never win again.
After the 2012 defeat, the Republican National Committee concluded the party needed to come across as more inclusive.
Certainly, social conservatives are a huge part of a winning coalition, which means that we have to change our language to be inclusive, but not abandon principle.
But those are fighting words to some of the conservative base who believe the word inclusive translates into squishy or moderate, definitely not principled. Yet in our interview, Bush says he is principled on traditional marriage, despite seeing the culture become more sympathetic to gay Americans.
I think we can be respectful, we can be compassionate, we can talk about this in non-judgmental terms, but ultimately for our country's success, traditional families are what are going to end up leading our renewal.
Bush grew up Episcopalian, but converted to Catholicism when he married his wife. He says his faith really convicts him in one specific area.
It informs me about the questions of the dignity of life more than anything else. I think life is precious from beginning to end.
There's no doubt a Bush presidential campaign would tout a list of conservative credentials, but some questions linger, such as, will his support for comprehensive immigration reform hurt him?
We should deal with the millions of people that are here illegally to give them a path to legal status.
And will the family name contribute to a reputation as a mainstream Republican establishment figure? That could hurt him in the GOP primaries if he runs. What do you say to those critics?
If I decide to run for office again, it will be based on what I believe, and it'll be based on my record. And that record was one of solving problems completely from a conservative perspective. I cut taxes every year. I shrunk the size of government. I acted on my core beliefs on social issues as governor. You know, I will be able to, I think, manage my way through all the chirpers out there.
And those chirpers will no doubt get louder if Bush decides to run, something he will really start thinking about next year.
Thank you all very much.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
And at that same event, the Faith and Freedom Coalition honored CBN founder Pat Robertson with a Lifetime of Achievement. He was given the coalition's first Winston Churchill Award. The group's leader, Ralph Reed, said that like Winston Churchill, Pat Robertson saw opportunities where others saw only difficulty. And where others saw only their ambitions, Pat saw God's kingdom. Pat said he was honored to be given an award named for Winston Churchill. He said the former British Prime Minister's contribution to freedom is monumental and an inspiration to us all.
I want to say tonight that you and I are not going to give up the fight until this great nation is once again lifted to the place it deserves among the family of nations, where it will be a bright, shining city on a hill, where it will be the hope of the downtrodden throughout the earth, and where indeed we can say proudly, we are one nation under God.
Pat, well said, and congratulations.
Well, thank you, Lee. It was a great honor, and I appreciate being there. It was a wonderful tribute. My family is descendant from the Churchill family. John Churchill, the first Duke of Marlborough, was one of our collateral ancestors back in history. And we've had a John Churchill. My uncle was named John Churchill, and so we've had, my mother was Gladys Churchill. We've had Churchills up and down the line.
What a great honor, and to receive the award named after someone you admire so greatly.
I indeed did. What I did in my little speech remarks, I compared and contrasted Churchill as Prime Minister with Barack Obama as President.
Oh, my.
What each one did in the same crisis that came before them.
Oh, I would love to hear that.
I think it's very telling. Anyhow, it was a wonderful event. I enjoyed it. I was deeply gratified by the love that was shown. It was a wonderful time for me.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered Americans are on average less religious and less happy than other U.S. adults. Those are the findings from an online survey by the Pew Research Center. 48% said they had no religious affiliation, compared with only 20% of the general public. And only 18% call themselves very happy, compared to 30% of all U.S. adults. CBN's Superbook aired throughout the Philippines this month. An estimated 1.2 million people watched the episode In the Beginning. It aired on a major television network in the Philippines that broadcasts throughout that country, and Nielsen rated it as one of the top programs of the day. Thousands of viewers responded by texting and posting comments to the Superbook Facebook website. There were more than 1,800 professions of faith. And you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.